Today on Car Guy Fridays, we're going to be replacing a Mazdaspeed Miata Axle. Now, for those that don't know about the Mazdaspeed Miata Axle, like myself, it's not actually the same axle as found on pretty much every other first and second generation Miata.
What?
The Mazdaspeed Miata actually has a slightly bigger inner CV, so you can see here this green thing right next to my head. The input part, the silver part right in front of my face, is slightly bigger than in normal Miatas. Now, this all sounds fantastic. The Mazdaspeed makes more power, it can hold more power, but there's a little problem, which is Mazda doesn't make these anymore. Finding a replacement is very difficult. It's a really interesting choice by Mazda. Generally speaking, on high horsepower NA and NB Miatas, what you'll find is that the outside shaft will break. They generally twist right here. This would be the weakest point, and it breaks off inside of the outer hub. But in Mazda's case, they didn't change this part. This is actually the exact same as a normal non-Mazdaspeed Miata. The part they changed was the inner, of which I don't think I've ever heard of a Miata breaking, actually. Typically you break this or you explode the ring and pinion diff. Don't go to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Napa, or any of the others. Unfortunately, they're going to tell you it's the same part number as a non-Mazdaspeed. It's simply too rare of a car for them to even inventory this part. So if you can't buy the Mazdaspeed axles, where does that put you? You're really left with scouring the forums, hoping to find somebody parting out a Mazdaspeed, or at least parting out the axles. Maybe you've got one person that broke an axle and couldn't find another one, so they're selling that one axle. Or you can go to the aftermarket. Now, the aftermarket has you a couple options. One of them is a company called Insane Shafts. The other, you've probably heard of, Drive Shaft Shop. Now, the Drive Shaft Shop axles are a tick over $1,000 for a set, and the Insane Shafts axles are about $700 for a set. We decided to go with the Insane Shafts axles. You can see here in the box. Go ahead and open this up. Gonna look through it. So here's what they look like, or at least the one that I've opened looks like. We've got much beefier CV joints here on both sides. So I thought we would compare the Insane Shafts to the OEM shaft. Now if we look closely, we can see here, this is looking quite a bit beefier and bigger, at least in the shaft part here. Maybe some heat treating or just machining stuff here, but otherwise pretty much the same. We've got the ABS rings, which all Mazdaspeed Miatas have, so that's good. Our ABS will continue to work. When we look on this side at the CVs, we can see that the Insane Shaft CV looks quite a bit bigger here as well. Now, this seems to move in all directions with little minimum play, whereas this one, it's got the kind of tripod motion. Because it's a tripod, that also means there's 3 points that are pushing whenever this is turning, thus inherently making this a little weaker. This one here, that is not the case. This is, I believe, what people refer to as a Porsche style CV. You can see the two axles sitting here in all of their glory, and they even got 2 stickers. Let everyone know that I paid excessive amounts of money for axles on a stock Mazdaspeed Miata. So let's start taking off the wheel and get the first axle in there so we can see how the fitment is. When going to replace an axle, you obviously have to take the wheel off, but there's a few other things you're going to need to take off in order to make this work. Brake caliper, this bolt right here holding on the ABS sensor. You have to take this bolt, these couple bolts out here for the ABS sensor as well, and you'll have to take this top out. After that, we ought to be able to pull it out and use a pry bar to pull this back and then stuff the axle in. So let's take them off. All of the bolts are now out. You can see how we can pull that back, forth. We're going to raise this up a little bit, get the axle sitting in there, and then use our pry bar to pull this back and then push it in. When you're putting your axles in, On the splines, put some anti-seize on the outside hub. I don't know how many Miata axles, or just axles in general, I've seen, where the splines are seized inside of the hub thanks to rust. You're not guaranteed that this will protect you 5-10 years later, but it's better than nothing, right? You do have to watch out for this stuff because it gets everywhere always. Now, we do have this in. It's not bolted in on this side yet, but it is snipped in on that side with the C-clip. So you can see we're going to end up pulling it a little bit, and then there'll be a bit of room. I'm assuming this is because the boots are brand new. So we'll put it all together. We've got everything together. Now let's raise it up in the air and see how this axle fits. We're under the diff now, and we've got the OEM axle on the left, and we've got the Insane Shafts Axle on the right. So let's take a peek and kind of see the differences before we go ahead and swap out the OEM axle on this side too. This is probably the best shot I'm gonna get where you can see them both really well in frame. You can see the fitment here. The ABS ring seems to fit pretty well. We'll find out when we go to drive it here in a little bit. Feels pretty good. Seems like it's in a good spot. It looks nice in there. Inner CV here looks pretty beefy. And then we got the OEM one over here if we compare, which is 15, 20 years old. Not that there's anything wrong with this, but since I've got the other new one, I figure I might as well not be peg-legged and put both brand new axles in. We've now got both axles on the car, which is pretty exciting. We're getting ready to go for a drive. Let's let you guys check out what's going on down here. And we can see we got the axle in up here, both sides, nice and tight. Same thing on this side. Let you guys see what I'm seeing here. Axle's on this side. The boot's a little bit pulled, which is something that I noticed is different from the OEM axles. These are actually a little bit shorter, but when it gets down right to it, the part is still inside of the CV, so I don't think it matters. I guess we'll find out, and if it does matter, then we'll get Insane Axles and test that warranty for you guys live on YouTube. So let's get it down off the lift and we'll go for a drive. So we're getting to drive the new axles. I don't hear any weird noises. Let's go ahead and put the top down here because, well, it is a Miata and I haven't gotten to drive it in a while. There we go. We'll drive around for a little bit, but first we have to get out of the neighborhood and somewhere where we can go fast and slow and see if we can hear any weird noises from the axles and kind of put them to their test. While we're driving toward the proving grounds, I thought I would talk a little bit about why I went with the Insane Shafts as opposed to Drive Shaft Shop. The first one is price. The Insane Shafts are a lot cheaper, and I really don't need them to hold crazy amounts of power either way. In my case, it's simply because you can't get axles for a Mazdaspeed Miata otherwise. The other reason that I went with the Insane Shafts is they're actually held on the shelf. They'll ship them out pretty quick. Now, I can't say that I called Drive Shaft Shop, but I've heard lots of stories about how Drive Shaft Shop has to make custom ones. You get on a waiting list and 3-6 weeks or whatever it is, and I need my Miata up and running. I'm ready to go. Alright, we just pulled up to the stop sign to a main road where we will be able to give these a little bit of power. Well, what power the Miata has anyway. This is the slowest car in the Car Guy Friday fleet, but that doesn't keep it from being fun. Just heard a little backfire in the exhaust there. I have missed that. So far we've gotten on it a bit here. I haven't heard any weird noises from the rear end. We're back on the lift after a successful drive. I heard no clunking, any weird noises, even a little bit of tire smoking and wheel spinning. Saw no problems. I don't see anything weird here. There's no rubbing, plenty of clearance. Nothing's off or anything like that. Hey, the axles are still in the diff. They're still in the hubs. You know, hanging out where they're supposed to be. We'll call this good on the Insane Shafts. If you've enjoyed this review of the Insane Shaft Mazdaspeed Axles, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me. If you've enjoyed Project Miata as we've went along, we have more in store. We've got the front up here. We're gonna put a front mount intercooler on the Mazdaspeed here soon. We got it hanging out right up there. That'll be our next video on the Miata. Thanks guys, see you next time.